Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Acorn Award, which is the highest award in the Scout Association in the UK for squirrels. Essentially, the Acorn Award is one of a series of different awards which are considered the top awards of each section being, for example, squirrels, beavers, cubs, scouts, explorers, etc. And the one of these for squirrels is the Acorn Award, as you can see. It's got a nice design. This is the newest of the various different tiered awards that are known as the Chief Scouts Award. So the full title for this award is the Chief Scouts Acorn Award, and it is presented on behalf of Bear Grylls, the Chief Scout of the world and of the UK Scouting, for essentially distinguishing oneself as a squirrel and experiencing a lot of what scouting has even at a young age. And just to give a bit of a brief overview of the Chief Scouts Awards in general, they are considered to be pretty good markers of how dedicated someone has been in scouting, especially in a particular section. And it also shows that scouts that have gone to a particular group that have earned one of these awards have got a very fulfilling program. So any leaders listening in to this for educational purposes should know that regardless of which top award, Chief Scout Award, is available for the section that you lead, you should try to be building your programs around that wherever possible. So on the Acorn Awards specifically, there is a few different requirements that you have to meet as a squirrel to essentially earn this Chief Scouts Acorn Award. And basically the outcome that you want to achieve by going through and completing this award is to demonstrate knowledge of teamworking, community spirit, independence, etc. And this just shows that these are the skills and the attributes that you will learn as part of doing the award and completing the various different challenge badges, as you can see there, and the activity badges. So this is a common theme across all of the Chief Scouts Awards in general, is an increasing amount of teamworking, independence, community spirit, things like that, being adventurous and having a lot of different scouting skills. Additionally, the later awards of the Chief Scouts Awards include a good element of leadership, especially up towards the Chief Scouts Gold Award, which is the one for the Scouts section. Additionally, the concept of challenge badges is something to bear in mind as well in terms of Chief Scouts Awards, as that is the sort of sub-awards that you're required to attain before reaching your Chief Scouts Awards. These are considered to be harder to achieve than standard activity badges being the small round ones you put on a uniform of various sections on your left arm usually. Most of the time, challenge awards are on your front of your shirt instead, to show the distinction between them. So I'm just going to go through each of the different challenge awards, as you can see here, for the Squirrel Scouts. In Squirrel Scouts, there is only a couple. There's only 4 here, as you can see, and you have to achieve all of them in order to achieve your Chief Scouts Acorn Award. However, as you go through scouting through various sections, beavers, cubs and scouts, etc., then the amount of challenge awards, challenge badges you've got to meet to attain your Chief Scouts Award for that section increases exponentially. It gets larger over time. But for Squirrel Scouts and the Acorn Award, it's just these 4. As you can see, related to the previous slide, there is a good aspect of Squirrel Scouting that's mostly about oneself. A lot of the later awards in other sections, higher sections, more senior sections, are more about working as teams and things of that nature. But in Squirrel Scouts, it's about sort of pushing your boundaries a little bit and being self-reflective, as you can see there. I'll go through each of these awards individually. These are the challenge awards you require for the Acorn Award in Squirrels. We'll start with the Adventure Challenge. So this is a bit of a wall of text, but I'm going to go through it, break it down, so don't worry too much. So the All About Adventure Challenge, which is the first one we are discussing today, is basically just about being prepared and going out and doing something out there in the world. It's a very good start to the award system in scouting, and it's a very good first step, I think, because things about, for example, point one here, about just choosing activity you want to do and pack your bag with the necessary equipment and clothing for your different activity. And it can really be anything. There's some examples there in the second point, but this is a really good first step within scouting, because the concept of preparing yourself for things sets you up very well for later awards. As you go through scouting, you'll go through longer and longer walks and moving into hikes, then moving into camps, and then eventually you're going to be going on Duke of Edinburgh's awards expeditions and King of Scout awards expeditions later on, potentially even the Explorer Belt, which I'll cover in later videos. But it's a very good start, I think, for these awards to basically encourage thinking of self-preparedness, and rather than depending too much on other people to make sure you're safe in a particular place, or make sure you've got the right equipment and you're fed and things. So number two there, take part in an activity outdoors and try something new. This is a big aspect of scouting. It's a big part of why we have the various different staged awards and we have the activity badges, is to encourage people to try new things they never tried before, such as sailing or model making or various other bits and pieces, whatever you can imagine, putting up tents, as it says there. But that's a big part of scouting, is getting out into the world and experiencing the world through a different light and with friends, essentially, because a lot of people nowadays, especially even young people, it's taking exorbitant amounts of time indoors, much more than is healthy for them. So getting out and about is good for mental health, of course. Point three there, basically just pushing your boundaries a little bit. So trying something new, as it says there, an obstacle course, we'll go for a walk, trampolining, or even something as bold as bouldering, or swimming or cycling, things like that. Something just to push the boundaries a little bit. There's a lot of people who grow quite timid in their early years, and that can stick into later life. So one of the benefits of scouting in general is sort of pushing your boundaries in a safe manner, and trying new things up to the point that you can do some quite incredible stuff later on in the awards scheme as you get through the years and through the different sections, all the way up to things like the Explorer Belt, going away to a foreign country on an expedition, things like that. And number four for the All About Adventure Challenge there is a campfire. This is very, very important aspect of scouting and the traditions of scouting that go back all the way to Baden-Powell in the early 1900s. Essentially, gathering around a fire, or as it says there, an indoor model if the fire is available for various different reasons. Reflecting on things and having a good time, cooking some marshmallows, things like that. Play some games. These are all, a big part of scouting spirit is being together and being out in the world and experiencing things like that. So even for a young age, like the Squirrel Scouts, that's a big part of our tradition in scouting. And oftentimes the people come from a very urban kind of lifestyle. It can be very interesting to get out into the woods and into nature, and it's very cathartic and a good habit to learn. So we start early on that. Moving on, we got the All About Me challenge, which is a little bit different. This is more about self-reflection rather than particularly something adventurous here. But as it says here, show something that shows off who you are, where you live, what you like to do. There is number one. This can really be anything, but there's an important part of life. One of the most important skills to learn is how to have confidence in yourself and how to show off your skills and your interests, your hobbies, things like that. Very important, because later in life, in job interviews and things even, the things you learn early on and the way you see and you've exposed yourself to these kinds of experiences is quite important. So we try to keep an element of that throughout the award schemes. Number two there, helping other people is the right thing to do. This is absolutely one of the highest points in scouting. We do a huge amount of volunteering in the community and helping people in general. We are a charity after all, so one of the things here to do is basically do something that is good for the community. So you can think about people you live with, whose job is to help people in school, nursery, scouts, things like that. One thing to mention here is that every leader in scouting is a volunteer. Something to bear in mind there, none of us are paid, but we do it because it's the right thing to do, and we hope to pass that on to onto the scouts and Squirrel Scouts, etc. As you can see here, you can help out around the home, help a new Squirrel Scout to join in, or teach someone something new, basically. So it's all about that community spirit. Helping out around the house is a very good thing to instill in people early on, as well as being kind to the new kid. It helps deter bullying and things like that later in life. Number 3 there, learn to do new things. Basically, do something independently, and basically do it safely with an adult. But it can be something even very small, as it says there, about brushing your own teeth, washing your hands. It's worth mentioning that I've actually had people who've joined Scouts, the Scout section, without being a beaver or a cub or a squirrel before. They actually haven't known how to tie their own shoelaces. So we've been on a camp before where we had a hiking element, and they were trying to tie their walking shoes and they were unable to. And we had to take time out separately, discreetly, to sort of teach them that skill. So it's good to start these kinds of things early, to help encourage that learning spirit in the Squirrel Scouts, and it's a good skill and outlook for later in life to look at becoming less dependent on people as time goes on. We all like to be independent as time goes on, because you don't want to be a burden on other people. Essentially, you want to be able to handle yourself if you're cut off from those people for various different reasons, or something happens, whatever it might be. Good for robustness and self-reliance, basically. Number 4 there, set yourself a challenge to help you learn things and build skills. Always trying to learn new things and do new things is a big part of scouting there. As it says there, taking care of even just a plant is a very important one. Something that is a dedication, basically, something that you are learning to do each and every week, and perhaps each and every day in terms of a plant and watering it. But that kind of long-term thinking is a big portion of scouting as well, especially in the later sections. It can be very, very useful for things like the Duke of Edinburgh's awards, which are very good for getting into universities and things like that. Those involve an aspect of doing something regularly every week for sometimes years. So essentially, starting young in terms of Squirrel Scouts and doing that is very important. Additionally, things like wearing a scout scarf there, as it says, which we also call a necker, oftentimes to squirrels there. Being presentable is a very important skill in life. People who look unpresentable tend to do worse in terms of not even just interviews, but in general. The outlook from a social perspective can change people's outcomes. Having a neat school uniform and things like that are very important as well. So we try and add those to these kinds of curriculums together. All around us challenge. A big part of scouting in general is to do with, as I mentioned before, the community, but also the environment, because the environment affects everybody in the entire world. It's one of the global problems, and we try and tackle that a lot in scouting, especially with things like the Scouts of the World Awards, the Community Impact Awards, things like that, and other local awards that we award for community engagement and environmental conservation. So as you can see here, essentially learn about your community and what they do. So important people like police officers, firefighters, nurses. In scouting we tend to have semi-regular visits to fire stations and things like that. But obviously knowing why police officers are important, why other community service workers are very, very important is vital to living in a community, in a society. Something that actually sadly lost nowadays quite a bit, depending on where people live and things like that. But ultimately, these people are the ones who help support society and keep everything you're running them in perfect order essentially. So starting to learn about why we value those people is important. Number 2 here, being a Squirrel Scout is about doing your best, being kind and helpful. So as it says there, essentially it's the same thing about learning how to help out and do your part in that community. So one of those things, fostering this early on is important as well, obviously. Everything we have on this list is very important, as I keep reiterating. But this one is more so, because having volunteering on a resume or a community application for like a university or something like that is very important. That's what people later in life tend to look for, to show that you are a more well-rounded person than just great. So we try and instill that into the Scouts very early on. Number 3 there. Essentially, there's a concept in Scouting called World Scouting. The Scout Association and Scouting in general is the biggest youth organisation in the world. A whole lot of countries have a Scouting presence, and we all wear the same thing, broadly speaking. At least we all wear a necker, the things you see around the neck, the coloured scarves, and we wear what's known as the World Membership Badge as well, which is the purple badge with the arrowhead symbol on. So essentially, knowing about the fact that Scouting is a worldwide movement is quite important, because it helps bridge that sort of global connection to different countries, and to learn, about the differences between us nationally and why those are important, and also to respect those cultures. So there are events later on in the different Scouting sections, such as jamborees, things like that, where people from across the world, Scouting people from across the world, will come together somewhere and go through sort of a cultural exchange type process with different activities, and Scouts from different nationalities will be put together in teams and such like. So it's very important to for that, because the more you know about how people in other countries, their history and their cultures, it makes you more well-rounded as a person. That's why a lot of people think travelling is as important as it is to experience more of the world. So in Scouting we try and bring that out quite a lot. One of the things this is working towards ultimately is what's known as the Explorer Belt, which is 10 days in a foreign country, where you learn about their culture essentially. So this is all working towards these greater jumps essentially later in life, which are important skills and sort of experiences for formative years really, and being a young person who's wise to the world, let's say, rather than having never left the country or having very little sort of outlook outside of their own local community. So here, number 4, essentially, yes, taking part in facts about another country or an international activity. There is something we do called JOTA/JOTI, which is Jamboree on the air and Jamboree on the internet, which revolves around radio and internet collaboration with Scouting, and sort of talking to Scouts from across the world, things like that. But a big part of Scouting is also teaching young people life skills. One of those is also cooking, things like that. So teaching the kids how to cook for themselves is a very important skill. There's a lot of adults nowadays that don't know how to cook for themselves, and they are worse off financially, having to order in food all the time, or worse off in terms of their health and their medical sort of situation, because of the food you tend to get pre-packaged and things like that is not very good for you usually. So we sort of tend to combine those in Scouting by teaching the children things about how to cook different meals, but a wide variety, and where they come from and why they're made and things like that. So the Altogether Challenge, this is one of the first real team working badges, which is again a very big element of Scouting. We have the patrol system and the various different things of that nature to help encourage these leadership and team working skills from an early age, which only serves to benefit people later on in life, of course. So number 1 here, team games. Team games are an element that we have throughout the entire Scouting. It helps build a friendly competitive spirit and a drive to sort of do their best, which works very well in things like tests and things like that later on in life. Also good for just recreation, getting out of the house, away from screens and things like that is very important. Number 2 there, you can do almost anything with the help of friends, be a great team member. So here's one about helping others to earn badges, bake things, passing on skills, things like that, or creating art. This is a very important element as well, clearly, because helping other people is a key element of scouting, and it serves to build social intelligence that may otherwise not develop as well. Essentially, giving the kids real opportunities to do this, because other times in a school setting or in a home setting, it can be very hard to incentivize people to teach others if they're of a younger age. But developing those mentoring skills is very important, right? And otherwise, outside of Scouts, they may not have those kinds of skills until far, far later in life. Number 3 here, make a choice for yourself and your team, and remember what people want to do and why you're doing it, how it might affect them. This is one of the first elements of leadership that we see, really, in the Scouting sort of award system, which is a very big element in Scouting. Later on in the Scouting system, there are in the Scout section, patrol leaders, senior patrol leaders, things like that, where in a very real way, if someone, one of the young people, sort of shows off their willpower and their willingness to lead a team, they'll be permanently assigned a number of other Scouts to help mentor leadership skills, but also to direct in games and teamwork in activities and towards badges and things like that. And they get awarded with points and other such things as they go through, and it sort of helps incentivize that spirit of ambition, but also of leadership and being conscious of other people while you're in those positions. So we're building leaders rather than building bosses, building empathy there too. Number 4 there, help your leader show someone new what Squirrel Scouts is all about. So fostering a spirit of community and helping people feel like they're welcome is a big part of things, because otherwise, people having a hard time at school, for example, they're maybe not fitting in too well or getting bullied or whatever the case might be, that we can't help as Scout leaders because we're not part of the official school system. This is sort of an additional way of kids having that outlet, that escape from school, but also being around like-minded young people and sort of being able to build those friendships outside of school. So myself, I was a Beaver, Cub Scout, I was an Explorer Scout, etc., all the way through to being an adult leader. I made some very important friends in my time in Scouting, especially in Cubs and in the Scout section, who I still talk to every day today, pretty much, or at least regularly talk to. Some of which are even in other leadership positions in the district here and elsewhere. So it's important to foster that, definitely. And the very last thing, as you saw at the first slide, was that a couple of activity badges are required in the Squirrel section to earn that Acorn award. So these are all the current eligible activity and stage badges for the Acorn award. As you can see here, there's a number of different ones that you can work towards. Some of these, which you'll see, are blue, and some of them are green. The blue ones are known as stage badges, and they persist throughout your entire time in Scouting, pretty much. So if you earn, for example, the swimmer badge, stage 1 swimmer badge there, as you see, then maybe in Cubs or in Beavers you can try for the stage 2 swimmer badge, which has a higher requirements. And you'll also see on there we have emergency aid. Some of these badges are very, very important. One of the things we try to achieve before the young people leave the Scout section is for them to have emergency aid stage 3, which allows them to perform CPR, recognize strokes and seizures and things like that, which is obviously a very, very important life skill in general. If most people in their lives encounter or witness a medical emergency. I myself have done things in regards to the recovery position, and learning how to use a defibrillator that have become important later in life that I learned in scouting. But there's other ones on here as well. The green ones here are specific to Squirrel Scouts. They don't persist beyond Squirrel Scouts, but they are very important as well. Exciting experiments there. Might be their first foray into science and actual science experimentation, depending on their age and the type of curriculum the school has. Let It Grow is an introduction to the world of gardening and things like that, which may be quite important if they live in a more urban environment. And other things as well. They're exploring the outdoors, etc., and being active are good things to foster from an early age. So just to summarise, essentially, the Acorn Award is the first of a number of awards known as the Chief Scouts Awards, and we try to make it a wide variety of different things to compose the award, and it's a good first step towards sort of a time in scouting. And once the squirrels earn that Acorn badge, usually they are very well equipped for starting the beaver section once they get old enough, and they are allowed to wear their Acorn badge on their beaver uniform to show that they have in fact completed the award, and they are therefore more recognised in terms of their capabilities than might otherwise be the case. But it just shows basically that the squirrels had a very good experience in that section. They've done very well for themselves, and that they are well equipped with the right ideas and the right concepts to achieve later awards and be set up with skills for life. Alright, thank you.